Hi, Sarah. How are you? It's Richard Taylor. Can you hear me? Oh, great. How are you
Thanks
today?
for joining. I'm well. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good, thanks. We'll get started and thanks to everyone for joining. I'm sorry I was having a little trouble with my Zoom. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. We have quite a few folks registered for the Spitters Conference. We'll give everyone a couple minutes to register if they haven't registered and to log in. Could someone let me know if you see a PowerPoint on the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes, we
very
can.
good. All right, very good, very good, great. So we'll get started in a few minutes. See, quite a few people have joined us. It's great. For joining us for today's Bidders Conference. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. So I think we can go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. At this time, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Life Sciences Workforce Development Initiative Request for Proposals Bidders Conference. My name is Sarah Cerui. I'm the Director of Research, Evaluation, and Analytics with the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development. I think everyone is muted, but just as a reminder, we are asking all participants to please mute your audio lines to prevent any background noise from coming in. I want to remind everyone that today's Bidders Conference will be recorded. And so the Bidders Conference, as you probably know, it's really an opportunity to provide prospective applicants a chance to ask any questions about the RFP and to clarify any sort of perceived inconsistencies, uncertainties, ambiguities in the RFP. To the extent that we can provide answers at this time, we will do so, but OWD will post a subsequent written transcript of any responses that were given today. The responses to written questions will be the authoritative sort of record of all of the questions and answers. All the discussions that take place during today's webinar really should be considered preliminary until that written transcript is issued. That written response to questions is issued. Questions received after today's bidders conference will be answered and posted to the website. So with that, I would like to first introduce our agency. I think most of you are familiar with our organization, but for those who are not, our office, we're the agency that oversees the city's public workforce development initiatives and policies, which are designed to help Boston's youth and adults achieve career pathways towards economic security. We distribute over $17 million in workforce funds on an annual basis. We also administer a number of federally funded programs and grants, such as the federally funded, if you're familiar with the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, Title I programs. We administer those programs through our office, as well as community development block grants, public service funds, as well as the Good Jobs Challenge grant, which is funded through the EDA. specifically as it relates to this opportunity, one of our mandates is creating alignment between the public workforce development system, the system that's really designed to serve non-college bound youth and working adults, particularly those with barriers to employment, and sort of connect these folks and these populations with sort of broader economic development activities and strategies in the regional economy. And sort of the goal of that alignment is to ensure that we have a training infrastructure in place to support major industries and also to provide workers with access to good jobs with career opportunities in those sectors. So that's sort of a little background on our agency. I want to just take a minute and introduce the staff from OWD who are present on this call. And we have, oops, might have just lost everybody. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you okay.
Having a little bit of trouble. Let me, my apologies, my screen just went out. Let's see if I can recover it. Anna, I might just have to hop off for a second and hop right back on. Let me just restart my screen if that's okay.
Yeah, have you made someone a co-host on there just to make sure we don't drop off?
I don't think I can because I can't see my screen at the moment. Let's see. So funny. Well, this isn't the best time for this to happen. Let me, Anna, if you can stay on, and I think I'll rejoin the group in just 1 second. Sorry about that.
Sure. Okay, yeah, it did transfer over. In the meantime, I'm happy to kind of jump in. I'll say hello. My name is Anna Scher. I'm the Senior Program Manager for the Neighborhood Jobs Trust, which is one of the funds that the Office of Workforce Development manages. And some of the funding for this RFP will come from the Neighborhood Jobs Trust as well. So nice to see you all here today. And I'll pass things over. I see my colleague Mindy Minardi here. If you want to say hello and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm also with the Office of Workforce Development. I'm working mainly with other grants like ARPA, the American Rescue Plan, and assisting on other grants that are also available. Nice to meet everybody. I'll also be working on the grant for the Life Sciences RFP. So nice to meet you all. Nice to see you. And I'll pass it on to, I don't know. Oh.
If I can go,
can you guys want to drop off? We started introducing ourselves. Anna went and I've gone, so you can.
I think Verena is on the call too. Go ahead, Verena.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, my camera isn't working either. Well, this is a good showing for OWD. Hi, everyone. My name is Verena Niederhöfer. I work with Mindy and Anna in the grants department at OWD, and I oversee the implementation side and contracting and subsequent activities on the grants that Sarah mentioned before and the ARPA contracts that we handle. So you'll be working with me and Mindy on this as well. It's nice to meet you all. Thanks.
Great. My apologies. I don't know why that happened. Did we miss anyone from our office? Okay, and I think our Director of Grants, Katie Gall, will be joining us a little bit later. And hopefully you can see the PowerPoint. Great. All right, so we'll spend a good deal of time today reviewing the RFP, and we'll try not to read the slides verbatim, but providing more sort of supplemental narrative. So no, hopefully no death by PowerPoint for me today, assuming it works. But I'll now move into presenting the agenda for today's webinar. So today we'll present an overview of the sort of scope of work, the purpose of the funding, the services requested, the eligibility requirement criteria, the terms of procurement, application specifications, and the guidelines in the application, as well as the timeline. And I'll also review very briefly the submission instructions. After that, we'll have time for a Q&A. Please hold all questions until the end of the presentation so that all of the questions and responses can be captured. But of course, feel free to jot down comments and questions in the chat as we go along. So as you probably saw, the aim of the RFP is to fund qualified organizations to provide sectoral training and intermediary services under the city's Life Sciences Workforce Development Initiative. So as you probably know, Mayor Wu's administration has made a strong commitment to support the city's thriving life sciences industry by providing equitable access to high quality training, education, and services that provide a pathway to a good career. So towards that aim, last December, the mayor announced the formation of this new initiative, which is really a sort of a broad effort to expand opportunities for a more diverse and inclusive workforce in the life sciences. The elements which kind of serve to support the goal of building a more diverse and inclusive workforce include increasing the number of workers receiving life sciences certifications or academic degrees, and expanding employment opportunities and career pathway in the industry, particularly workers from underrepresented communities, including those without four-year degrees and workers of color. Expanding the availability of training and education program in the life sciences, increasing the number of Boston residents with access to middle and high wage earning opportunities in the life sciences through demonstrated employer commitments, removing institutional obstacles to occupational mobility, providing resource to help workforce development partners, training partners, and employers leverage available funding to place workers in good jobs in life sciences and more broadly in the STEM fields, engaging industry leaders in an expanded role of informing training curricula, removing credential barriers, creating certificate training programs, and training job seekers and incumbent workers, and empowering engagement between stakeholders in the ecosystem. And that's really through creating opportunities for sort of substantive exchange and cross-system alignment and improvement. So through these efforts, the city aims to expand the pool of women and people of color who pursue life sciences careers with the goal of 1,000 new Boston residents employed in the life sciences by the end of 2025. So that's sort of the broad kind of context for this RFP. So for this RFP, we are seeking qualified organizations or or a consortium of partners to deliver on one of two categories of services. So this is a solicitation with two service categories. The first category is for job training services. We are seeking to fund job training services for Boston residents to gain entry into high growth, high demand careers in the life sciences and STEM industries. We're looking at a minimum award range of $100K for this category. And then the second category is, as I mentioned, we're seeking to fund an intermediary who can really bring together partners in kind of the life sciences cluster ecosystem and workforce ecosystem to identify workforce needs, plan and develop and implement strategies, and raise funds to support these kinds of strategies. And there we have, I think, a maximum of $500,000 is available for category 2. Overall, we have $4 million available in funding for this RFP, and the funding comes from two pots, as you probably saw. The first is the Neighborhood Jobs Trust Fund, which is funding that comes from linkage fees paid by developers of large-scale commercial construction projects to provide income-eligible adult Bostonians with job training. The second pot of funding is the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds, which is federal aid awarded to the city to respond to the public health and economic impact of the public health emergency created by the pandemic. Awardees will be funded through NJT or ARPA, but it's not likely that they'll be funded by both. Each funding source maintains its own sort of specific monitoring requirements and data collection processes. The RFP review team will ultimately determine the funding source that will support each project. And once the funding sources have been defined, the grant staff will work with the awardees to ensure that, the monitoring and data collection processes are set up according to the requirements of that particular funding source. So I want to go briefly through each category in a little bit more depth. So I want to start with the first category. So funding for training and placements. As I said, we are seeking proposals for job training models that provide Boston residents with supportive services, connections to employers, and the skills training to attain employment in life sciences and life sciences occupations. The training must lead to high quality jobs or paid internships. To define quality jobs, OWD uses some standard measures that include wages, hours available to work, availability of benefits, opportunities for advancement. But we also encourage applicants to share their sort of programmatic definitions of job quality that might go beyond the standards and explain in the proposal how their proposal meets both sets of standards. Preference will be given to programs that tailor services to groups that are underrepresented in the STEM and life sciences industry. That's really sort of the priority of this RFP. Successful responses to the RFP will also demonstrate an understanding of both the technical and non-technical skills employers require for the target population and the needs of the Boston residents who are really sort of the recipients, obviously, of the training program. And as I mentioned, 100K will be available for Category 1 programs. For Category 2, what we are looking for is a sectoral intermediary who will bring together employers, training partners, other relevant stakeholders to create and implement coordinated pathways to career advancement and employment in life sciences, and really support all stakeholders in the development of a broader and more sort of inclusive training and hiring ecosystem. We really envision the intermediary playing an important role in sort of coordinating the ecosystem and addressing any service and resource needs and addressing any institutional level barriers. So some of the strategies that we've sort of envisioned that will be taken up by the intermediary include, serving as a central sort of industry resource for workers, training providers, and employers by addressing known gaps between training and successful employment and career pathways, planning regional strategies among employers and training providers, including those funded under Category 1 that lead to structured pathways and beneficial employment, engaging in curriculum alignment by crosswalking job skills with training curricula, and addressing barriers to job opportunities and career advancement for low-income workers by transforming human resource practices, coordinating support services and community resources to address the needs of career seekers, and also collecting data analysis on the most successful strategies. So really sort of a kind of a learning hub in a way to expand inclusive employment strategies for life sciences employers in Greater Boston. So as I mentioned earlier, we have about $500,000 is available for the intermediary. Both service categories are really considered as sort of complementary, and the funded entities are in each category are expected to work collaboratively. A single organization may respond to both service categories, but can only be the lead on one application. There is no limit, though, to partnering as a sub-applicant. You should identify in your proposal whether you're applying for Category 1 or Category 2, and obviously answer all of the questions that are relevant to your chosen category. And the awards will be made for a 2-year contract with an anticipated start date of October 2nd, 2023. So I want to now talk a little bit more in depth about the specific elements and requirements for each category. For Category 1, as I mentioned, sort of successful proposals would really include a plan for outreach and recruitment, assessment, case management, skills training, job placement, and post-placement support. Each of these elements are described in detail in the RFP, but I just want to highlight a few key points from each element here. So for recruitment, we want to see proposals that demonstrate an understanding of the target population. We always like to see data that supports, any information or statements you have about any sort of information about the population. We would like to see sort of supported with data. And we also want to see sort of strategies on how best to engage and serve that population. In terms of assessment, the proposals should demonstrate that the program has the ability to conduct thorough assessments of prospective participants to ensure that they can receive appropriate services. Programs should also include a discussion of how they're assessing participants' digital literacy skills and access to technology. This is especially important for programs that are operating in a remote or hybrid sort of format. In terms of case management, proposals should outline the organization's strategy for providing a coordinated response to address participants' needs and remove barriers to success, including support to ensure retention and address any concerns that employers that might have post placement. So this is once the participant has completed training and is in internship or job placement. I also want to highlight that stipends, wages are allowable expenses for the funded programs. In terms of the actual job training, the RFP really outlines what we want to see in terms of the elements there. But just to highlight a few things, the proposal should outline the job training goals, the objectives, the methods of instruction, the targeted jobs and occupations should be clearly defined, and I think, again, really supported with labor market data on starting wage, demand, and growth. If there is data that you can pull on gender and race by occupation, that's always that's always very helpful context and background. Employer partnerships are, sort of a requirement for service category 1 training providers. We want to see that employers are involved in as many aspects of the program as possible. Proposals should, demonstrate clear evidence that training will lead to employment or internships. If internships are the primary outcome, there should be a clear demonstration of how the placement will lead to full-time employment following the internship. Proposals should also describe partnerships with at least one employer that outlines that employer's commitment in the activities of the employer, in activities of the program, and each proposal should include a letter of commitment from the employer specifying the nature and extent of the support and planned activities for the participants while working with the training partners. This could look like, employers' involvement in curriculum development, in providing industry briefings for staff and participants, interviewing program graduates, obviously paid internships, sponsored apprenticeships, and sort of similar activities. The next element is job development, job or paid internship placement and post-placement services. So we want to see proposals describe a timeline of job, internship development, placement, and also describe post-placement activities based on industry timetables and course schedules. Programs should provide support both for accessing and applying for jobs or internships leading to interviews, as well as support for graduates after placement or after job or internship placement. Evidence must be provided to demonstrate that the program will assist individuals with barriers to employment throughout their job search. And then finally, the last element that's listed under category 1 is cooperation with the intermediary. in general, the training organizations that are funded under Category 1 should work with the chosen intermediary. As I mentioned, the intermediary will be responsible for really sort of coordinating the life sciences training system, identifying and addressing gaps in terms of wraparound or supportive services. We're just standing up this intermediary, through this RFP. So we do expect that, there will be sort of an iterative or reflexive process of working with the intermediary, working with programs to sort of refine the kind of collaborative, in a collaborative way, the scope of work. And as it's being stood up, of course, there will be many questions about how to coordinate employer training partnerships across the system better, which resources and services could be potentially centralized to raise the quality and reduce duplication of efforts and create sort of economies of scale. So we expect that each training provider will have sort of wraparound services tailored to their students, but we want the training providers to be part of kind of conversations about areas to strengthen this through collective partnership. So we expect that each of the selected training partners really to be part of those conversations and to kind of support the development of this intermediary entity and in terms of advancing its and helping to define and advance its agenda. In terms of the specific elements under Category 2, the intermediary's role, as I said, is to provide support to the recipients of training, to the training providers, really to the system as a whole, including participating life sciences employers, ensuring that all parties have access to the needed support. The intermediary must show a demonstrated track record of supporting non-traditional workers in successfully entering career pathways and of working closely with employers to meet their workforce needs, particularly when engaging in inclusive training and hiring. The intermediary will have the opportunity to work with Category 1 recipients, but we really expect to see the intermediary identify really sort of work to identify and address the needs in the system by engaging stakeholders in a process of sort of strategic alignment and coordinated action, which will include, exploring what can be done together, choosing initiatives or strategies to pursue, identifying and aligning, and where appropriate, sort of pulling resources and obviously executing and measuring the results. In terms of eligibility, the lead applicant must hold a 501c3 status under the IRS code or have an identified fiscal sponsor holding a 501c3 status. Nonprofit, private, or public higher education institutions are eligible to apply to this funding. Of course, we welcome applications from partnerships or collaborations. Partnerships will need to identify a lead applicant, and as I mentioned before, an organization may be part of multiple applications as a partner, but can only be the lead applicant on one application. So that's a more general criteria, but we have specific eligibility criteria for the training category. Specifically under Category 1, participants that should be sort of the target sort of population are unemployed or individuals who are unemployed or underemployed, defined as those in temporary, part-time, or unstable positions, those working in jobs without benefits, those whose income does not suffice to meet the needs of their family, including those earning less than the City of Boston's living wage. They must be a Boston resident, and they must be 18 years or older and be willing to and be able to be placed in and retain full-time unsubsidized employment internship leading to a career with full-time employment in a living wage job defined as $17.55 an hour as of July 1st, 2023. NJT, this is sort of specific to NJT, and as I mentioned, we don't yet know, sort of we'll determine which pot of funding will support which project, but specifically for NJT funds may only be used to serve clients who are at or below 80% of Boston's area median income. In addition, this project has the goal of serving at least 75% of participants being one or more of the following populations: BIPOC communities, individuals with limited English proficiency, or low-income communities. For category 2, this is, in general, as I mentioned, the intermediary will be engaging all entities that have a vested interest in Boston's life sciences sector. So again, that could be employers, that would be employers, education training providers, workforce development agencies, and potentially other ancillary services like supportive services. In terms of procurement, so category 1 training contracts will utilize a milestone and performance-based funding structure. So category 1 awardees will receive an initial payment upon execution of the contract, and then the majority of the subsequent payments for program implementation will be provided on a milestone basis. And then we're looking at the remaining about 35% of the remainder will be paid out on the basis of a negotiated rate for placement. And for payments to be made, participants enrolled in category 1, that sort of performance payment piece will be determined by whether by criteria around sort of enrollment in training, completing training, obtaining training related employment, entering post-secondary education and training. And this will all be sort of negotiated during the contracting phase. For category 2, contracts will use a milestone, just a straightforward milestone payment structure in which payments will be made upon the accomplishment of defined milestones. The start and, as I mentioned before, and I'll just mention it here again, the start and end dates for these contracts we're looking at a start date of around October 2nd, 2023, and an end date of October 2nd, 2025. In terms of the application materials, all proposers must provide the following information. There is a cover sheet, it's in Appendix A. There's a budget and budget narrative. Those are also enclosed, or I think they're linked on the website as appendices. Appendix B is the budget form. So you must complete all 3 forms, the budget summary, budget cost detail, and budget narrative. That's kind of a packaged Excel workbook. For the job training programs, you also, if you're applying under the category 1, the job training program should also include materials outlining the proposed course of training. So this can include a syllabus, curriculum outline, sample lessons, lesson plans, or a weekly schedule, but we do have a page limitation for those materials of about 3 pages. We also will need a copy of 501c3 letter from IRS, and the whole proposal narrative is limited to a 10-page document. Applications for either category should include evidence of support from employers. So we want to see letters of commitment detailing an employer-specific commitment to actively participating in the project, and that's a requirement for category 1 programs. Applicants should also ensure that their proposals comply with the following requirements: that you're responding to each section of the RFP, that all required attachments are included, including the cover letter, and you must submit the entire application as a single PDF. And I'll just go over the sections in the proposal guidelines very briefly, but again, please review each question in the guidelines section carefully and respond to all of the questions that are relevant to your chosen category. And point values, the way the sort of proposal will be evaluated is that point values are allocated to each section of the proposal narrative. So under category 1, the proposal sections are agency background and organizational capacity, statement of need, and target population, program design, letter of commitment, support, staffing, and then, as I mentioned, the budget narrative. For category 2, the proposal guidelines are include a one-page executive summary, a section where we ask about your background and your agency or entity's background and qualifications, an initial work plan, staffing, and then again the budget narrative and resources leveraged. This is just sort of a timeline of the procurement process. So we issued the RFP on June 5th. It's posted to the website. A letter of intent is not required, but there is a Google form if you are interested in submitting a letter of intent. It's always helpful for us when training providers submit an LOI, because it helps us plan for, kind of the review process. Again, it's not required, but we encourage you to submit an LOI if you think you will apply. And that is due on June 23rd by 5 p.m. So this Friday. If you have any questions about the RFP, you can submit those directly to me by July 14th. And then responses for this RFP are due on July 21st. We are expecting to notify awardees by early September, possibly sooner. We're just kind of building in time for, the fact that it might just be a little bit more. Sometimes doing procurements over the summer can be challenging as folks are traveling, but expect to hear from us in early sort of award decisions in early September, and we're looking at an anticipated contract start date of October 2nd, 2023. So I'm going to stop here, and I think there are a number of questions in the chat. So maybe what I'll do is stop sharing, and I will. Okay. So so the first question is, how many awards are anticipated to be made for category 2? We're anticipating one intermediate. I think we're thinking about one intermediary. That's sort of how we've envisioned it. I mean, of course, all of it depends on what kinds of proposals we receive. But I think we're really thinking about sort of one entity that can kind of help to coordinate the system. But of course, it's possible that it could be more than one. Again, just depends on the kinds of proposals that we received. 100K plus for category 1. So I guess the question is, yes, 100K is the minimum. So we know that, especially for STEM trainings, oftentimes they're longer and could be more expensive. So we do anticipate, larger award thresholds, but 100K is the minimum. Is funding over 1 year or multiple years? So it's a 2-year funding cycle. Will these slides be available to us? Yes, we'll post the slides and the recording to the website. If funded through ARPA, are there income requirements? If so, what are they? What % of category 1 will be funded by NJT versus ARPA? How do you decide? All right, so if funded through ARPA, are there income requirements? I don't believe there are any income requirements under ARPA. So I'm just going to check to see if my colleague Katie Gall is on. Or if Mindy, I don't know if you know definitively, but I'm sure
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, Raina, you can confirm that. What % of category 1 will be funded by NJT versus ARPA? Well, we have and Anna, correct me if I'm wrong, we have about, I think about 1.65 is from NJT, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, so the majority of the grants will be funded, through ARPA. So there's more, flexibility there. But, obviously, I think, NJT is a training fund. So, we anticipate the majority of the, all of the funding for the intermediary will be coming out of ARPA. So, yeah, so you did sort of, we have to, I haven't done the math here, but I mean, it will be, whatever is left over potentially, minus the ARPA, minus the funding for category 2 will be left over for ARPA for training programs. And the way that we'll decide is just by kind of seeing which projects best fit the criteria. We're trying to be flexible here and sort of make those decisions on the back end. And so we anticipate, we've already set out the training. We've already basically set out the eligibility criteria using NJT as the standard. So, we anticipate that it shouldn't be too difficult to make those kinds of decisions. So I hope that's helpful. How many people are expected to go through the training placement? It's very hard to say. As I said, I think we anticipate that per capita cost for a life sciences training is probably higher, or at least at the high end of what we typically are typical per capita cost, which is around 10,000, between 8 to 10,000. But we anticipate that it could be higher. So it's difficult to say, and again, it really also just depends on the types of certificate programs, but we are anticipating, higher than average per capita costs for us. I'm not sure, if I can give you an exact number. So a minimum of Boston residents that should be in the training program to be eligible. I guess I don't understand the question. For category 1, training participants should be Boston residents. I don't know if you want to unmute and clarify.
The question might be that a training is running available to more than just Boston residents, and they're asking whether they want a certain percentage of that training to be going to Boston residents for us to consider it appropriate for this fund. These funds.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I think, Verena, typically we would,
so if we're supplementing with these funds and existing training, we won't care whether other clients are receiving the exact same services as long as they're not funded under our grant. So no is the short answer then, if that is understood.
Yes, that's right. And that is my understanding. Is the end date October? Yes, the end date, yes. MJ asks, is the end date October 2025? Sorry, yes, that's right. Carmen, does the applicant have to be Boston based? Does the training have to be offered in Boston? I don't think that the applicant has to be Boston based. Obviously, the training, the participants must be Boston residents. So, we assume that the training should be accessible to Boston residents, whether that in terms of, transportation, or whether that means if it's a, virtual or sort of hybrid based training. But the applicants don't have to be Boston based. Is the medical field considered STEM? Yeah. So is medical emergency or EMTs training eligible for this program? So this is kind of a complicated question because you know, the medical, like hospitals are sort of considered part of the, if you sort of look at a standard definition of the life sciences industry, hospitals are often included in as part of that. So, you know, I think the spirit, though, of this RFP is that we really want to see folks being trained for jobs in the life sciences sector, or, you know, for life sciences occupations, whether that is in the health, you know, even if it's not necessarily in sort of what you might think of a traditional life sciences industry, like, but so for example, there are a number of life sciences occupations that are available in healthcare, and I think that would be fine. So, you know, it's a bit, you know, I guess here it's a little bit more about sort of the kind of what we're trying to achieve here with the RFP, which is really to, you know, stimulate opportunities for folks in life sciences occupations or in technical occupations within the life sciences industry. I would say that, you know, EMT is not typically one of the top life sciences occupations, or I'm sorry, healthcare occupations that I see in the life sciences sector is a better way of saying it. So I would probably say no on the question of if are EMTs eligible. Okay, is the recruitment of the participants the responsibility of the lead in category 1 or 2 or another entity? No, so for category, if you are applying under category 1, you must have all of those service elements in your training model, from sort of recruitment to, you know, all the way to sort of what we discussed when we were going through each of the elements. So recruitment, assessment, case management, skills training, employer partnerships, job placement, and then post-placement services. That sort of life cycle of the training model has to be demonstrated in your proposal. So it's not part of any, it should be, if you're applying under category 1, that's, your program should contain all, should have all of those elements. How many proposals in category 2? I think I just answered that. You said 100K is the minimum for category 1. What is the maximum? We don't have a set maximum. And is there, and also, is there a cost per participant guideline? There is not a cost per participant. I think that's something we're hoping to learn through this process, is what is a, you know, what is a reasonable cost per for training in this sector. You know, and we don't have a maximum, but I will say, you know, sort of again, going to sort of the spirit of this, and going back to kind of one of the goals of the life sciences workforce development initiative is to increase the number of training programs, particularly like community-based training programs, or at least ones that have those kind of community-based connections. So we are looking to fund, you know, I think we're looking at sort of that, like a balance in terms of, you know, knowing that there will be probably a higher per capita cost per participant, but also we want to make sure that we're funding we're sort of increasing the number of training programs that are out there. So it's, I guess I can't really directly answer that question, because it also depends on what we receive in terms of the number of proposals. But just, I guess, there is no maximum. And as I said before, we are expecting our typical cost per is around 10,000. I think that's even on the high end, and I think we're thinking that it will probably be even higher for training programs in this space. Will it be possible for Category 2 to receive an initial payment upon execution of contract as well as Category 1? Yes. I think, Eka, you're referring to the fact that it says that we'll be, providing an initial payment upon execution. Yeah, that is possible, and that's something we can discuss during contracting. If non-Boston residents or incumbents within Boston-based employers seeking upskilling, are they eligible or must they live in Boston? They must live in Boston, so they have to be Boston residents. For Category 1, the lead applicant must be a nonprofit, correct? To elaborate, can a for-profit company apply on their own, or do they need to partner with a nonprofit? The lead applicant must be a nonprofit. The grant is listed for life sciences. I just want to confirm engineering and/or green tech programming would not be applicable. Let me get back to you on that, because what I probably should do is kind of list the industries, and we can do that in the responses to the questions. So if you don't mind being patient, we can put that in, we can respond to this question specifically in the responses. What is the best way for employers to get involved? It's a really good question. I mean, I think, kind of separately from this process, we have been, the city has been working with employers on a number of different efforts to try and create opportunities for better, greater occupational mobility for folks who are in other sectors that are kind of relevant to who might have kind of transferable skills for occupations in the life sciences. We've been working with employers to address credentialism in the life sciences. So if you are an employer, I think, and you're interested in getting involved, I think the best thing to do is probably to reach out to me directly, and my information is listed in the RFP. Can you apply to run 2 training programs with 2 different employer partners? You can only apply as the lead applicant. You can only be the lead applicant on one application. So I suppose, you could apply not as the lead in partnership with another agency to run a different. I guess, Sarah, I assume you're talking about 2 different training programs or just 2 different employer partners? I guess I'm not clear.
Yes. So let's say it's a training program that's for one specific role that 2 employer partners need, and you want to run 2 separate cohorts in a single year. Could you apply for a sum of money that's large enough to cover both cohorts?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, yes, you could. Yeah. Yeah, we're not, I mean, the number of cohorts, we leave it up to, we don't dictate that. That's completely left up to the training providers. How can services include incumbent worker training given the required outcome of job or paid internship placement? Services include, it's a good question. I think, so this is something we would clarify in our fact sheet, or the responses to the questions that were presented today. Obviously, it wouldn't be new job placement, but we would, I think, expect to see, placement in an occupation that, I guess what we would expect to see in the proposal is how participating in the job training will lead to sort of lateral or so we would want to see sort of not new job placement, but placement in a job that has demonstrably better wages or benefits or career opportunities. So I think that's something we can clarify, Sunny, in our responses. But I think that this, that's what we would expect to see when we're talking about job placement for incumbent workers. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'm happy to stick around if you have other questions. Let's see. Oh, here's one. Sunny, thank you. Yep. All right, I'm happy to stick around. My team's happy to stick around for the next 7 minutes or so. If you have any other questions or clarifications, like I said, we will post the responses to questions pretty soon, hopefully by the end of the week. And we'll update that continuously until I think July 14th, which is when we'll stop taking questions. But thank you so much for taking the time to participate in today's Bidders Conference. We really look forward to reading your proposals and yeah, please let us know if you do have any questions. MJ, will the crossover life sciences healthcare roles be listed on the website? Yeah, I guess I could. I could list them, but I mean it's based on burning glass data, and it's point in time data that I can share. I probably wouldn't post it to the website, honestly. If you want to see it, just email me. If you're interested in, if you're interested in, I can share some information with you about life sciences occupations in healthcare and health, and vice versa, healthcare occupations and life sciences, if you're interested in that. Can you just repeat if there is a maximum amount for category 1? There is not a maximum amount, no. But just keep in mind that we are looking, like I said, to really sort of create more training opportunities than currently exist in the environment, so in the ecosystem. So we can go ahead and adjourn, but if you, like I said, happy to stick around for the next 5 minutes if folks have questions, or if you want to stay on and you want to, as you're kind of reviewing the RFP quickly, and if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask.
Yeah. Hi, Sarah. Just
Hi.
a quick question about kind of the eligibility of private companies or entities. So it sounds like based on your response, I just want to be double sure, is we would private companies would need to find a non-for-profit to partner and have the non-for-profit lead the application to qualify.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So my entity currently partners with Quincy College. Would that count? Like
yes.
within Quincy College?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Hi, Emmanuel here. I have a quick question for you. So it seems there's a real-time matchmaking going on. You need to work with an intermediary if you are a training provider. And I'm wondering, do you already have some intermediary in mind that maybe we can approach you and say, who do you already know that probably we can approach and say, can we do an application with you? Just checking.
We don't have an intermediary. We're at this, we're not, what we want to see from category 1. So what we're trying to do is stand up an intermediary through this process. And because we anticipate, that there will be future funding opportunities in this space. And so, what we want to see, though, in terms of the collaboration between the training partners and the intermediary is the training partners really being part of the conversation of developing the intermediary, because, it's going to be, as you said, I mean, it's going to be sort of being stood up and sort of defining a scope of work and bringing together stakeholders. And obviously those things take time. So, but, what we're really doing in this RFP is setting the expectation for training providers to be in conversation with the intermediary and to sort of be part of that collaborative as they are developing and building out their sort of scope of work. So it's not that they are, so at this point, we don't, obviously we're procuring the intermediary role, so we couldn't, we don't have an idea yet of who that will be, but we do expect that, the training providers and the intermediary will work together in some capacity once we've sort of selected both.
And there, I know we're running out of time, but my last question is kind of follows up on your last comment. I think Sunny had asked this, which is like the dollar per candidate, and you had mentioned 10,000, and given the specialty of the training, that may not be sufficient. But if Mayor Wu's tagline is 1,000 employees with $4 million, I think of it as 10,000 per employee. That's only 400 people. So
this initiative, this RFP is one part of the overall life sciences workforce development. This is one phase of funding, and we're anticipating that there will be future phases or rounds of funding. We don't know yet what that looks like. I don't know where the money, I don't know. I'm not sure. It was announced a few weeks back when we announced this initiative, or when we announced that the RFP was issued, that Secretary Jones was at an event when we made the announcement, and she mentioned that the state is planning to invest in training and education in life sciences in the Boston metro region, and Boston metro region would be potentially, obviously part of that, the focus of those investments. So, we're anticipating that there will be funding in future, there will be future stages of funding, and this is one part of this overall life sciences workforce development initiative effort, which includes other there are other sort of pieces of this happening as well. As I mentioned, we're the mayor's policy team has been really working closely with a consortium of employers to address credentialism in the field, and so and to create remove any barriers to occupational mobility that would support transitions from occupations that have transferable skills, or folks who might have relevant sectoral experience to enter into life sciences career pathways. So there are other sort of efforts happening under this umbrella, and then this initiative, this round of funding is just one part of, and I think what will be coming down the road or coming down the pike is additional investments.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, it's 5:01, so I guess we will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you so much for your time, and look forward to reading your proposals. Great.
Thank
Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thanks so much. It's really helpful.
Thanks. Thanks,
Have a
MJ.
good one.
Bye.